In this video, I'm going to show you how to make 5 basic power-ups to use in your games. We'll cover how to make a health booster, speed booster, and a teleporter. Then we'll go over a minimizer to make your player really small, and lastly, a power-up to make you invisible. My goal is to show you some basic ways to implement these so you have a foundation to build on and make something awesome. Before we get started, take a quick second and hit that subscribe button so you catch all my latest game development content and tutorials, and drop any suggestions down in the comments. I'm Reedster with Far Gaming, and now, let's get started. So first off, if you watched my last video on making enemies attack, this is the exact same scene that we used in that video. A couple things have changed on the back end with some of the scripts, but we'll go over those as they come up. Just a quick refresher, whenever I hit the play button, I can click around the scene and move my player around. I've got one guy here with a cannon and another one with a blade, and whenever they're within a certain distance, they can attack the player. When the player takes damage, they change color and they lose 1 point of health for every time they get hit. So the first power up that I want to implement in here is going to be a health booster. And I want to set it up so that every time the player picks up the health booster that they gain 10 points of their health back. But no matter what, they will never go over their maximum player health of 50. So in my project tab, I have a power up prefab that I've already made. I'm going to drag that into the scene. It's going to throw it in the middle. This consists of an empty object with a sphere collider that's a trigger. It's the same size as the sphere itself. And then inside of that, I have an orb. The orb is the actual sphere that you're seeing. And then I've got a power up float and scale script attached to it. So if I hit play and I kind of zoom in on it a little bit, you'll see that it's kind of scaling in and out, and it's bouncing up and down a little bit, so it gives it a neat little power-up look to it. I'll be using this prefab for all of my power-ups throughout this tutorial, and I'll just be changing the things that I need to change for each of them to work properly. So to turn this into a health booster power-up, first we will change the name from power-up to health booster. Next, I'm going to go to the orb, and I'm going to change the default material color to a health booster material that I've made to give it a nice healthy red look. And then going back to the original health booster parent object, I'm going to add a script to it. In my power up scripts folder, I have a health booster script. Real quick, I'm going to add the orb as a public variable right here. And then I'm going to open up the script and we'll go over it. So first you'll see we have all of our public and private variables up here at the top. And then we have a onTriggerEnter method. If you remember, the orb has a sphere collider that the isTrigger box is selected on. So if something collides with that, then the onTriggerEnter method is going to run. And we only want it to run this code if the player is the one that collides with it. So we're going to check if the tag of the object that it collides with is called player. If so, we're going to run this code in here, which we're going to get the other object that collided with it, which is going to be the player if this part right here ends up running. And then we're going to get a component of the player called player health, which is the player health script attached to the player. So we're going to get that script, and then we're going to get a public variable in that script called player health, which is where we store the current value for whatever the player's health is. So we're going to plus equals, which is just going to add 10 to whatever it currently is set to. Next, we're going to make the orb disappear to simulate that the player has picked it up or absorbed the health booster. And then we're going to also make that sphere collider be disabled so that the player can't collide with it again until it gets re-enabled and pops back up. Also in this script, I'm showing you one particular way that you can use a timer to set when the orb is going to pop back up. All the rest of the scripts will use a different method, and we'll go over that. I think it's a little bit simpler in the other ones, but I still wanted to show you how you could do it. So I have a respawn timer variable, and I'm going to set that to 0. And then in the update method, which runs every single frame, we're going to see if the respawn timer is still less than 10, and if so, then we're going to add time.delta time to it, which is the amount of time that's passed since the last time this update method ran. It runs once per frame, so the amount of time that's passed since the last frame is going to get added to this. So basically, that's going to keep repeating over and over until respawn timer is actually greater than or equal to 10, and then this part right here is not going to run anymore. And instead, this else if statement is going to run because respawn timer is now greater than or equal to the respawn time, which was set to 10f, which is same thing right here. And the orb is still disabled, it's not active. So as long as these return true, then we're going to set the orb active and we're going to turn that sphere collider back on. So quick recap, player collides with it, they're going to get 10 health, we're going to make the orb disappear, we're going to start a timer for 10 seconds, and after 10 seconds, orb's going to pop back up and the player is going to be able to collide with it again and get another 10 health if they want to. And then real quick, I'm going to show you in the player health script, we have a player health variable as well as a max player health variable. And so in our update function, I have a part that prevents the player from healing above their max health. So if they pick up the orb and technically their health is at 45, now they're supposed to go up to 55. If the player's health ends up above the max player health, then we're going to just set the player's health equal to max player health. So if they're at 55, it's going to just put them at 50. They're not going to be able to stay above 50 health. So we can go back to our game and we'll hit the play button. I'll have the player take a little bit of damage real quick, and I'm going to speed this up. So the player's taking a bunch of damage. We're going to go up here and you'll see the orb disappears as soon as we collide with it, and the health went up about 10 points. And then here in about 10 seconds, that orb pops back up and we can hit it again and get another 10 points of health. Next up, we're going to add our speed booster. So I'm going to go back to models and add another power up prefab. This one I'm going to rename speed booster. I'm going to expand it and go to the orb and change the material to the speed booster material that I've made. I'm also going to need to change the position of this one, so I'm going to just set it to 8 and 8, and put it down here in this bottom corner, and then go to my scripts and add the speed booster script to the parent object. I'll grab the orb and throw that into the public variable, and we'll open it up. So this time, with the onTrigger enter method, whenever the player collides with the speed booster, we're going to grab the navmesh agent component of the player and set that equal to our agent variable. So a navmesh agent has a speed and acceleration setting. We're going to grab the original and set it equal to these variables. Next, we're going to take the current speed and the current acceleration and multiply both of those by the boost multipliers, which if I go back to the top, you'll see the boost multiplier is 3. So we're going to increase the speed by 3 times and the acceleration by 3 times. And then we're also going to make the orb disappear again. And now, like I said, I have a different timer in all the rest of the scripts. This time we just have a variable called boost in time. I take time.time, which is the current amount of time that has elapsed since the game very first began. And then I add the boost duration to it, which is just 5 seconds. So time.time, let's say we're 60 seconds into the game, we add boost duration. This boost in time is going to be 65 seconds. Similarly with the orb respawn time, the current time plus 10. So if it was 60, we would be at 70 seconds for when the orb should respawn. And now in our update function, if agent is not equal to null, meaning we have something set to agent, and the current amount of time elapsed is greater than or equal to the boost in time, 65 seconds. So if we are at 65 seconds or greater, then we're going to set the agent's speed and acceleration back to their original speed and original acceleration. We're also going to now set the agent equal to null, just we don't need it anymore, so we're going to get rid of it. And then again, we're checking the current time. If it's greater than or equal to the orb respawn time, then bring the orb back, respawn the orb. So like I said, using a timer like this, I think is so much simpler than having to increment a timer every single update frame. It's a little bit less code and helps it all look a little bit nicer. So going back to our editor, I'll hit play. And as soon as I can get my player over here, once they collide with it, we'll be able to move them around and they will move 3 times faster and accelerate 3 times faster than they originally could. And the health orb still works. And after 10 seconds, that speed booster comes right back. All right, so for our third booster, I'm going to add the power up prefab again, and this one is going to be the teleporter. Again, I'll go to the orb and change the material to the teleporter material. Go back to the teleporter, and I'm going to add a component of the teleporter script. Throw the orb in there again, and we'll open it up to look at it. This one's very simple. When the player collides with the orb, we are going to just change their position to a new position. So I'm going to set them at the 0, 1, 0 position, which is right in the middle of the map. I'm doing the same thing with the orb respawn time, and we're making the orb disappear once they've ran into it. And then all we need in the update function is time.time being greater than the orb respawn time, and we will respawn the orb. Going back to our editor, one last thing I forgot to do is move this orb out of the way. So we will set it to 8, and then the z-axis will be -8. Stick it in that top corner. I will hit play to try it out. So we will move the player up there, and as soon as they touch it, they will teleport right here to the center, and they'll automatically pick up the health booster because they've freshly collided with it. Next, we are going to add our minimizer. So I'm going to give that the name minimizer. I'm going to go ahead and set the position to -8 and -8. I'll open it up and go to the orb, go to materials and find my minimizer and add that to it. Going back to the parent object, now I'm going to add the minimizer script and throw the orb in the bottom, and we'll open it up. So at the top, you'll see I set the default shrink factor to 0.3, meaning the player, if they are 1, then they're going to be 0.3, so 3/10 the size that they originally are. Once the player collides with this orb, then we're going to grab the transform of the player, which holds their position, rotation, and scale. From that, we're then going to grab what the original scale of the player is, which is just 111. And then we're going to multiply the local scale of the player by the shrink factor. So that's what's going to actually calculate the new size of the character and apply that to them. Then we're going to set the end times for both of our boost end time and our orb respawn time, and make the orb disappear. In the update function, as long as we have a value in the player transform variable and the current time is greater than the boost end time, then we're going to set the player back to their original scale, and we're going to make the player transform variable null. And then lastly, same thing as before, orb respawn time, we're going to make the orb reappear once the time is up. Once again, we'll go back to our editor. I'll go up here and hit play. And I'm going to get right next to the orb, and I'm going to wait for the enemies to get a little bit closer. I want to show you that the blade and the cannonballs go right over top of the player now. So I'm able to slip past both of these enemies pretty easily without taking any damage, grab the health, and everything still works. Lastly, we're going to make an invisibility power up. So let's call this one invisibility. And then I'm going to do all the same stuff you've seen me do so far. Set the position, go to the orb and set the material for it. Go back into the parent and add the proper script to it, and throw the orb into the script. So real quick, before I explain the invisibility script, let me show you the AI controller script that controls the enemies. So basically, it used to be that you would set the destination at the start of the game, but I changed that to where it's in the update function. So you're constantly changing what the destination is because it's looking for an object with the tag player. So I want that to update regularly, because what if there's no object with the tag player anymore, because I'm going to change that to invisible when the player goes invisible. So every single frame, they're going to look for an object with a tag player, and then they're going to start heading towards that object. But if there's not one, they're going to move to the last spot that they knew the player was, but they're not going to move anywhere past that if the player is moving around while they're invisible. So going back to the invisibility script, you'll see once the player collides with that orb, we're going to set the other object, the player, equal to the player variable. We're going to change the tag of the player to invisible. We're going to set our 2 different timers and then set the orb to inactive. In the update function, we're just checking our 2 different timers as to when we're going to set the tag back to player and set the player equal to null, as well as the orb respawn time. One last thing I'm going to show you that's different than how it was in my previous video is the player used to take damage as long as it was either a projectile or a blade that was colliding with it. But now I'm also checking if the player's tag is set to player, because if they're set to invisible, I don't want them to be able to take damage at all. So as long as they are set to player, that means they're visible, and one of these 2 things is colliding with them. We're going to change their material to the player damage material, take 1 point of health, and all that. I've also changed how I manage the materials for the player in this script. So whenever this happens, we're going to change the material to the player damage material. And then I have a reset material Boolean value, which I'm going to set to true. and then a reset wait time, just like we've been doing so far. So only for half of a second. And then at the bottom down here in my update function, I have an if statement that says if the reset material boolean is set to true, and if the time is greater than the reset wait time, then turn the player's material back to the default player material, and we're going to set the reset material boolean back to false. Similarly, handling the invisible material, if the player is invisible and the reset material value is false, then we're going to change the player to invisible material. We're going to set the reset material boolean to true and set the wait time to 5 seconds. So the player will be invisible for 5 seconds, and then all of this will evaluate to true, and they will turn back to their normal player material. Now that I've explained all the changes that have happened in these three different scripts, we can go back to our Unity editor one last time and hit the play button. And I will go and collide with that one. You see the player changes to where they look invisible. Both of the enemies still head down here because that's the last known position they had, and then they stopped following because they didn't know where else the player had gone. So another 10 seconds goes by, we could do it again, and I can slip right past the enemies. That's all for this tutorial. Remember to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and let me know in the comments what tutorials you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.